Half hour being brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. We have a multitude of insurance needs. They handle them all. Make sure you're fully insured, and above all, also try to do everything they can to save you money. That's what the great people do. That's what people who believe in customer service do, and that is Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. An old friend joins us, Randy Johnson. Randy, how have you been?
Oh, pretty good, Steve. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you.
Old home week here for me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, all the Center Daily Times days, which I know you cherish because you work with so many great people there. I mean, like really great people. That was some staff you had at the CDT.
Yeah, Ron Bracken, got to know him real well. John Severance, Terry Hess, Doug McDonald. Yeah, a lot of good people there.
Great people. All right, this Minnesota football team, P.J. Fleck, at one point had them on a 4-game winning streak. What have been the common threads to their wins so far this season?
A lot of they were doing things. They're winning the key moments, and they very much were protecting the football too. Their loss to Rutgers, they had a late turnover that really cost them, and then they didn't protect the quarterback nearly as well. Didn't run the ball real well, but during their win streak, they were keeping it third and manageable on offense. The quarterback Max Brosmer, the graduate transfer from New Hampshire, was very, very accurate during that stretch. Completing just short of 75% of his passes, and spreading the ball around. His winning touchdown at UCLA basically was his fifth read in the progression, and got Darius Taylor running back out of the backfield for wide open for a touchdown. So they've become a lot more of a passing team this year than they have in the past, and a lot of it has to do with the play of Max Brosmer.
But it also has helped that Jack Ham and I have always felt that Jackson, the wideout, we always liked him. Yeah. We thought he was a really good player. How important has he been to Brosmer this season?
He's been huge. He's the go-to guy. Took him a little bit to get going in the season. He didn't have a touchdown catch through the first few games, but he's made some just spectacular catches this year. He's a guy that he'll probably get a look on Sundays next year.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I also thought watching the Rutgers game, he threw a lot to Gears, the tight end. He would not have been the starter at the beginning of the year. Why has he developed so well?
He's just a good sized body, and he's able to get open. He's been on the same page with Max quite a bit too. It's kind of an interesting story. When Max came here after New Hampshire, he took all of his skill position players down to his home in Georgia. Parents' home in Georgia, and basically had a week of bonding and drills and stuff at his local high school, and I think that's paid off pretty well this season. He's done a really good job of getting a lot of different receivers, and including Darius Taylor on the backfield involved in the passing game.
In the transfer portal, you have time to evaluate a guy because you're seeing them against, for the most part, comparable talent. So Cam Ward goes from Washington State down to Miami. Comparable talent. Right? Florida State missed. I mean, everybody watched DJ's entire career at Clemson and at Oregon State, and it's not there. And they still took him. What did they see in Max Brosmer at New Hampshire that made them think he could be this kind of quarterback at this level?
I think a lot of it was the accuracy, and I think too it's that they can't shop at the big high price stores in transfer portal situations. They're limited a bit in their NIL. It's gotten better, but they couldn't go spend $1 million on a quarterback like some schools were able to do. So they got a bargain, and they were looking for somebody who would be the leader, and he came in right away, and he joined the team for drills and things during their bowl preparation. Just get to know everybody, and he basically from the start he won everybody over. It helps too that he's working with the quarterback coach and offense coordinator Greg Harbaugh, who they've really been on the same page. It's almost like it's almost like he's a co-coach in a way.
Okay. Does the offensive coordinator know that? No.
No, it's a really good relationship. They get a lot of give and take between them.
Yeah. When you talk to him about when he was at New Hampshire, what was that experience like, and what does he think now?
Oh, he's very happy to be here, and he had a lot of support from the coaching staff at New Hampshire when he decided to move up. They hated to see him go, but they were very encouraging of him, and helped out with their evaluation with the Minnesota's coaches and everything. So I think he's really enjoyed his time here. It's pretty much everything he expected it to be, and he's been able to put together a really nice season. I'm sure he wants to see what he can do at the next level, and I think playing up in the Big Ten after playing at the FCS level, I think he's probably feels pretty good about what he's put on tape this year.
I'll get back to a couple of guys on offense in a moment, but on defense, I feel like there's a guy that can make plays on each level, Joyner, Lindenberg, and then the freshman. Tell us about Coy Parrish as a high school player, and then tell us why he's made this transition the way he has to being a college player.
Yeah, Coy he's a really good story. He's from a small town up by Duluth called Esco. So he's playing against pretty, smaller level players and everything, but he was dominant, and PJ Fleck and his staff, they were recruiting him hard from the start. And there was a game last year. He had a pick six, and he's going down the sideline. And PJ Fleck and a couple of assistants were there watching the game. He flashes him the peace sign as he's going in the end zone. So he's kind of got a pretty gregarious personality. Ohio State was after him big time. Ryan Day flew up to Esco on the last weekend before signing day and was had a hard push, but Coy just decided to stay in Minnesota, and he can't. I don't think he just regrets his decision at all. He didn't early enroll. He wanted to try to win a state championship in basketball or track, and that didn't happen. But he got in June, and pretty much hit the ground running, and you could tell he could be a difference maker just with his athleticism. When they beat USC here, he had the game-sealing interception in the end zone, and basically the fans stormed the field, and he's riding high on top of some fans' shoulders. So I think he's feeling pretty good about where he's decided to go to school.
What did it mean to not just Minnesota to keep a guy at home, but what did it also mean to the fans in the state that a talent like that stayed home?
Yeah, that's very it's very important. The state can be pretty provincial about their athletes. They really like to support Minnesota people, and a lot of times over the years, the top recruits in the state didn't always stay here. It's gotten better under PJ Fleck. He's kept more and more of them over the years, but in the past, a guy like James Laurinaitis went from Wayzata, Minnesota to Ohio State. You've had people go to Notre Dame. Actually, Quinn Carroll, a guard on the team this year, started at Notre Dame and came back. So it's not always easy to keep the kids in state because if they're looking, a lot of times they'll be looking at a bigger name program like an Ohio State, a Notre Dame, a USC. So it's tough to keep them, but they've done a good job of developing the ones they have kept.
Yeah. What about Joyner off the edge and Lindenberg, the inside linebacker? What have they meant to give Minnesota some balance at all three levels?
Yeah, that's been a huge deal, especially Lindenberg. He was banged up last year from the start. He had a bad hamstring injury in training camp, and it basically kind of lingered, and he ended up getting a knee, I think, later in the year. So he missed a lot of games. I think he only played in 4 or 5, and their defense suffered big time there. He's their leader. He's a leading tackler. He just kind of sets the tone. So, he's a pretty quick guy. He can go sideline to sideline. So he's been this year. It's been back to normal for their defense, which had been pretty good under Joe Rossi in most years. Though Rossi left to take the Michigan State defense coordinator job, and they got Corey Heatherman from Rutgers in here, who's done a nice job this year too. Then John Joyner, he gives them the pass rush. He's got moves. He got a really good first step, and it's pretty relentless too.
This team has 20 takeaways this season. They are plus 12 giveaway takeaway, Randy. When they have had the takeaways, what have you seen? And conversely, when they have not had games with takeaways, what have you seen?
Yeah, basically the takeaways that's they've fed off that really well in their wins. Basically playing the complimentary football, where the defense will get a takeaway and the offense will usually score right away on it. They've had them at opportune times too. They've a couple game sealing interceptions by Coy Parrish. They've a couple game changers. Justin Wally had a pick six against Maryland to set the tone there. Things like that they've done really well. They haven't had the turnovers. They tend to commit one themselves. They had a bad turnover at Rutgers deep in their own end that led to Rutgers go-ahead touchdown. They had a fumble against Michigan that led to a Wolverine score that in a game that turned out that they had a chance to win in the end. So they've done a good job for the most part, but if a key to their winning is getting those turnovers.
Darius Taylor, I thought he had a chance to be a 1,200 to 1,500 yard rusher this year. I know Brosmer's presence maybe has cut into that. What have you seen pro and con in it? Because obviously as a pro, he's caught 45 balls. He's important in the pass game. Yeah. But what have you seen pro and con in it?
His role changed a lot, and I think, with bringing in Brosmer, they were going to pass more. I'm surprised that it is as much as it has been. They haven't been as good of a rushing team this year. The offensive line just hasn't clicked as well. But Taylor's still been very effective in getting yards. It just so happens that it's through the air a little bit more. He was banged up at Rutgers, so that was a tough game for him. Just didn't have the push. I think the bye week will help immensely against Penn State this weekend.
Spencer, the other wideout, came in as a transfer. Brockington's played against Penn State before, and then there's Christian Driver, who transferred from Penn State. What's your thoughts on those three opposite Jackson?
Yeah, they've all had their moments. You haven't, especially Spencer. He's solidified that role very well. He came here last year, didn't really see the field nearly as much as he has this year, but he's really developed well. Kind of supplanted taking playing time away from Brockington a bit. And Driver's been in and out of the lineup. He's had some moments, but he's just hasn't been able to supplant anybody in front of him yet. So, but he's developing. I think they like what they have in him.
Randy, what's been the thought process about having the bye week this late in the season?
I think they're pretty happy with the way it fell this year. Both bye weeks. They basically had their first one was after the UCLA game. Then before Maryland, so they played really well after that. When they came back to play Maryland, beat them 48-23. This one fell well mainly because they've been kind of a banged up team the last few weeks. That two road games in a row at Illinois and Rutgers. Won one of them, lost the other, and now they finish with Penn State, and then they go to Wisconsin on Black Friday. So I think having that little rest is going to help them quite a bit.
Randy, how the fans reacted to all this and to this football team this season? I know that Penn State's a big name coming in. I understand that, but how have they reacted overall to this team?
Overall, it's been pretty good. I mean, they've had good crowds all year. They've done a nice job of getting it close to full, if not full, for some of these games. People early on when they lost to North Carolina though for a game they probably should have won. They had missed a couple field goals that would have won. They lost 19-17. They lost back-to-back to Iowa and Michigan, and there's some grumbling about, then it was just like, okay, what kind of year they're going to have here just because they had USC coming to town next week. But when they upset USC at the time, and they were ranked, so that got got the fans back on board quite a bit. The field storming game after that, and they carried that momentum up to UCLA, which they had a really nice showing of fans that went out there, about 15,000 in the Rose Bowl. And then they probably, a little bit of luster lost last time out when they lost to Rutgers. Probably it doesn't have the shine in this matchup as it would if they would have had a 5-game winning streak going in. But people are, they know that Penn State's obviously the favorite, but they're optimistic that the Gophers can put up a decent fight.
All right. What do you think of the new Big Ten? Now, Minnesota's in the middle of this. They don't have the length of travel of Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland. They don't have the length of travel because they're in the middle. But what have you thought in seeing this play out east to west and a 1 through 18?
Yeah, it's what I've seen is it's like every team has a stretch in their schedule that's going to be pretty tough. And it's how you navigate that 3-game stretch. And you've seen some teams. You've seen like right now, Nebraska's on a 5-game skid. Wisconsin's on a 4-game skid, I believe it is. So basically, you have some. You could get some spots where you're loaded up against a couple really good teams. Like Wisconsin played Oregon tough, but it was still Oregon, and the Ducks found a way to win that game. So you might be like, probably your record might be maybe a one more loss than you might have had last year, that type of thing. It's a challenging conference now with those 4 teams from out west in there.
How did you think it might work? How curious were you as to what would be the pluses and what would be the pitfalls? And in your opinion, what's been greater, pitfalls or pluses?
I would say the pluses have been greater. I think it kind of, just the new blood kind of re-energized things. Yeah. And especially with Oregon, they came in and right now are, they've clinched their spot in the Big Ten title game already, and they're a serious contender. I think too, you couple that with the playoff expanding to 12 teams. So now you see a team like an Indiana that has jumped up, and they have a very good chance to make it into the playoff. It remind me a little bit of the Gophers in 19 when they upset Penn State to get to 9-0. They finished. They had lost a couple at the end, but when they got to 9-0, they were right in the mix. Had it been a 12-team playoff back then, and if it expands to 16, you'll see teams like that pop up and have a chance. Maybe teams that aren't year in and year out power, but they put together a good season every once in a while. It's the one thing I don't like as much as there are divisions. So if you lose a couple of games, you can fall out of the title hunt pretty quick. Then you're ending up just mainly playing for bowl positioning, to get to 6 wins or more.
Yeah, I agree with that. Randy, absolute pleasure. Really looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
I've talked to like Mark Brennan. I know he'll be here. So a lot of good old people from State College. Looking forward to seeing.
It's old home week, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah. Have a good one, Steve.
Randy Johnson, who at one point in his career wrote for the Center Daily Times, and he went out and he wrote, I think, for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Now he's with a Minneapolis paper, and it's he does great work, has for a long time. Found a home out there, and in finding a home out there, continues to do great work, and he's been covering Minnesota football, basketball, and everything else in between out there for a long time. So it's great to have him on. We're going to have Mike Grimm on the show as well, my golf partner. Each of the last 2 years, Mike and I, there's 4 days, 2 days of golf one year, 2 days of golf the next year. So of the 4, we were paired together twice. All right, I'm talking about same cart, the whole thing. One of the greatest guys going. This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, Home, Life, Business, Boat, Motorcycle, RV. They'll take care of all your insurance needs because customer service means everything to them, which means they go the extra mile to save you money as well. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com and News Radio 1070 WKOK. This half hour being brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Pickle bar led by my 2 personal favorites, the barrels and the dills, indeed second to none. Look, we have tailgating, Thanksgiving, the rest of the holidays. Stock up now at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Well, I will say this, away from the broadcast where he's brilliant anyway, you can't ask for a better guy to be paired up to play a couple of rounds of golf with during the course of the year than my buddy Mike Grimm from Minnesota. Each of the last 2 years, we have been paired up together and we've had a blast. Mike, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Now, always great to be on. Looking forward to seeing you here in the Twin Cities. It'll be nice and chilly. I don't think we'll be golfing Friday or Saturday when you guys get to town, but always fun for sure to catch up. And yeah, those golfing outings are pretty good. We got another one, I think, hopefully coming up this summer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Ennet this year. And then you claim, you got us in a couple of years maybe.
We're going to get you into Minnesota to play a round of golf. By the way, I heard your commercial there. So February 3rd, right? No, February 3rd. Monday night, February 3rd. I mean, the night before the Gophers play the Nittany Lions in basketball. So maybe we can enjoy a brew and some pretzels.
You got that right. You got that right, my friend. I'm looking forward to that. It'd be great to have you in town. Great to have you in town. Right. And you got Hazeltine all set up for this weekend? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. We're working on a few good courses, though. When we get that thing going, we're going to have fun.
We are going to have fun. It's also going to be fun for me to be out there when it's in the spring or the summertime, too. All right.
Yeah.
This football team Minnesota, to me, is a really very good football team in so many ways. What have been the elements that have made this a really good team for PJ this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest factor is that they have not turned the ball over much, and the games that they forced turnovers, they're amongst the nation's leaders now. They were number 2 for a long time, but they've gone now. They did not get an interception. I guess they got one interception against Rutgers, but they have turned the ball over a lot in terms of forcing turnovers, and they've kept good care of the ball. That said, they had a catastrophic turnover in that Rutgers game, right before they go for bye week, when the tight end fumbled, in their own red zone. I think it was a 13 or 16 yard line, so it was a short drive. And the other thing, PJ's teams have always been really disciplined. They have not been penalized much. In fact, PJ always hangs his hat on the fact that they're usually first, second, or third in the country in least penalized teams yardage wise. That has not been the case this year. They've played pretty mistake free in terms of not turning it over and then also making plays, particularly in the secondary. But they have had some untimely penalties, and I know it's driving him nuts. But I think turnovers have been the big driver. They're improved on offense from the previous couple of years. They really have missed Muhammad Ibrahim, and they've gone to Steve Moore of what I would call kind of a short passing game. Darius Taylor, their running back, is not. He's not putting up the rushing numbers that we thought he might, but he is killing it receiving out of the backfield. I think he's the leader amongst running backs in total receptions, and he's likely going to break the all-time running back reception record at Minnesota. So they're utilizing him in some other ways, and so the offense has been a little more consistent, a little better, and the defense is much better this year than it was last year when the Gophers finished the regular season 5-7.
When they have not created turnovers, has it created a problem for them in terms of the ability to win the game? Have turnovers really been part of the critical part of the formula?
Yeah, no question about it. Even the Rutgers game, as I mentioned, they had the one catastrophic turnover. They were even on turnovers. I think each team had one, but the one that Minnesota had was a much bigger problem because it gave Rutgers a short field. Now, that said, Rutgers was throwing the ball into the end zone for a touchdown when Minnesota made that interception, but the Gophers are getting the ball back at the 20, and it was maybe even up, and then the rest of the game was even, and they had a couple of bad offensive line assignments where they gave up a safety on a sack, and so just some uncharacteristic mistakes, I would say. They really should have won the opener against North Carolina. That's one that's kind of going to hang over them, particularly when we get, in a couple of weeks to the bowl pecking order, and you're starting to look, and if Minnesota's at 6 or 7 wins, and you're looking and say, oh, the Hawkeyes are at 7 or 8, and Wisconsin's there at 6, or Nebraska's there at 6, or wherever it is, you're going to say, boy, the North Carolina game is the one. Just one win can push you in this pack without divisions, right? I mean, you can move from 10th to 5th with one win. Right. And so that when they had the Big Ten kicker of the year had the ball on his foot to win the game at the buzzer, and he missed it by 2 feet, just wide right, plenty of leg, and I think that's the one that could keep the Gophers out of Florida, and send them somewhere else.
Mike, Max Brosmer comes from New Hampshire. On the other side of the ball, Ethan Robinson from Bucknell, right here. Yep. What is it this staff sees in guys at other levels that they think will allow them to translate to this level? Because both of them have.
Yeah, and they've had success as well in previous years as well. And the starting nickelback Jack Henderson is a similar story on this team. He's from southeastern Louisiana, a transfer from FCS. I think it's twofold, Steve. I think one, they have to look realistically at the recruiting pool, right? So, hey, you need a cornerback. Okay, well, who's after this guy? Oh, well, Penn State and Ohio State and Oklahoma, and it's like, I don't think Minnesota's probably going to win that battle. So now who can you get, and then who can you target? So FCS guys become pretty grateful for the opportunity. So they have to be strategic, and they have to be really good at evaluating, like you said, the translation. So I think the strategy is twofold, because it just, there's a reality. There's a real life that coaches have to deal with. I mean, it'd be really, delinquent for a head coach at Minnesota to say, we'll just go beat out Ohio State or Michigan for one of the top, linebackers in the transfer portal. Probably not going to happen, right? So what can we do? How can we get it? The young man who just had that horrific injury from the Tennessee Titans against the Vikings last weekend, Jack Gibbons. I don't know if anybody saw that highlight where his ankle was just basically, Abilene Christian, transferred to Minnesota for his senior year, led the team in tackles, and was leading the Tennessee Titans in back-to-back years in tackles. And so they've identified guys, one, that fit the profile. P.J. Fleck has always talked about the fact that, he wants a certain kind of guy. He is a unique individual. He knows that. He often says, I'm not for everybody. But if you can target a guy at the FCS level that, they're going to want an all-conference guy, they're going to want an all-America guy, a guy that translates, like Ethan Robinson is going to get a chance to play pro football. There's just no doubt about it. And they targeted him and said, look, this guy can be a starter from day one. And he's been really, really good. And Brosmer's work speaks for itself. I think he's, when you're talking about an 18-team Big Ten, if you say you're in the upper half of quarterbacks, that means you're pretty darn good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's had a terrific season to this point. But what was it they saw in him that said he could go from New Hampshire to playing in the Big Ten? I mean, what did PJ and those guys see in him that told them that? Because it's not like, for example, Will Howard going from Kansas State to Ohio State, and you saw him in the Big 12 championship game, or Cam Ward from Washington State down to Miami. What did they say?
Well, I think they saw all the yards he threw for last year, and the fact that he was a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, which goes to the top player in that division. So he was basically, depending on which publication or Writers Association you believe, he was either a first-team All-America quarterback or second-team All-America quarterback. So I think they probably thought to themselves, if we're going to go sink into FCS to get our quarterback, let's look at some lists first and see who's the best quarterback in that division. And Max Brosmer fit that profile. He had, I think it was almost 40 starts. And then, as PJ likes to say, when you recruit the high school kids, you might start recruiting them as 10th graders, and you create a long long-standing relationship, like a marriage, right? And then by the time they commit and then they sign, you know them, you know their family, and PJ is really sincere about that. It's not just lip service. They really are a close-knit group with these guys throughout the recruiting process. He calls the transfer portal speed dating, because you have to make a decision in about 3 days, right? A guy jumps in the portal. One, you have to decide, okay, do we want to offer him? Let's have a Zoom meeting with him. Let's have him come here. Let's go visit him, however you want to do it. And there's others that are interested. So he's like, that's more speed dating, and you have to have some instincts. And their instincts were that this kid could come in and be a day one starter and be a great leader. And their instincts were exactly right. He's one of the most impressive kids I've ever been around, Steve. You know, this is year 19 for me here. And we've had, you have it there too. Kids come through and there's some that you just put a star next to. You're like, man, that kid he gets it. And Max Brosmer is one of the most impressive guys I've dealt with at the college level, and he's worldly. His family has moved around a little bit. They've lived in a bunch of different places, and he's just been really impressive. So their instincts were right on him, and he's been really good decision maker in games. He has only 4 interceptions all season, and I would argue at least 2 of them were not his fault. And if you really pushed it, I think you could say 3 of the 4 interceptions were not his fault. So yeah, he's had a nice year.
And I guess he brought the receivers down to Georgia, to his family's home during the off season. What did that mean? Not only the cachet on the quarterback, but also for them to know him and bond with him.
Yeah, it was huge. They got together, and he invited him down to Georgia. And I guess their family has a cabin nearby in South Carolina, so they spent part of the weekend there to start. Just like, I don't want to use the old cliche, but kind of kumbaya, right? Sit by the campfire at the lake, go out on the jet skis and the boats, and just have some fun and get to know your quarterback. And then they went to Atlanta then for almost a full week. And they just did 7-on-7 stuff, right? Just, hey, here's the route tree. Here's how we're going to do it. This is the timing we need. He took them to an Atlanta Braves game, and I don't know who he knows or what they got. Like I said, he's kind of a world traveler here, but he got these guys all personalized Atlanta Braves jerseys and got them down on the field to watch batting practice wearing their personalized, these receivers for the Gophers, their personalized Atlanta Braves jerseys, and then they watched the game from the stands. And so it was all part of it. The other thing he does, through NIL, he's a smart kid. He went out and worked an NIL deal with a local restaurant, and he brings his offensive linemen out to eat every Thursday night at this restaurant. And then, they all tweet about it, and I don't think it's free food, but I think they get a nice discount, and Max Brosmer picks up the tab with what's left. And so he knows, take care of your receivers, take care of your linemen, and you're going to be okay.
Coy Parrish, you live there. You understand the state so well. What did it mean to not just the Gopher program, but to the state that he stayed?
It was big. And PJ and the staff have actually done I don't want to say a better job. I think they've re-emphasized, they've always recruited the Twin Cities Metro. Minnesota's a unique state. It's huge, first of all, right? Like, from the southern edge of the state of Minnesota to the Canadian border is about the same distance from the Minneapolis area all the way to St. Louis. So it's a long, like if you're in southern Minnesota, it's an 8 or 9 hour drive to Canada. So, and it's a lot of rural area out there, small schools, 8-man football. And so I think this staff, it took them a minute to figure out there might be some good players out there. Now, to be honest with you, one of the things that I think turned them into like, hey, let's go recruit this outstate a little bit, was North Dakota State and South Dakota State. Their success at the FCS level, and when you look at the North Dakota State rosters especially, it's full of Minnesota kids. Like almost half the roster, some of their championship years are from Minnesota, outstate Minnesota as they call it here, rural areas of the state. So they have made a much more aggressive find on some of these guys. And yes, nobody else has offered him. We're going to do that, which maybe they didn't do that when they first got here. In Parrich's case, totally different. He's from a really small town up near Duluth, Minnesota, but an absolute rock star. He was offered by Oregon. He was offered by Ohio State. He probably could have picked his school. He was PJ tells the story that he was, I don't know, whatever, it was Under Armour or Army All-American or one of the All-American games in Texas. after his senior year. He called down to a coach that he knows that's on the staff that was coaching him. He said, "Yeah, Coy's looked okay. I don't know. I don't know if the competition level is going to translate." And then Coy went out and had 2 interceptions, including the game winner in the end zone, and was named the game MVP. And PJ, he felt pretty good about the commitment anyway, but he felt much better after that. Ohio State made a late push. Ryan Day flew a helicopter up here the day before signing day, and he stayed. So that meant a lot. I had him on my podcast about a month ago. Very soft-spoken kid, which I was surprised by, Steve, because he's such a confident player for a freshman. I don't think I've seen a more confident freshman come in and just kind of nonchalantly say, "Yeah, I'm pretty good, and I'm just going to go start. I'm just going to go make game-winning plays. I want to return punts." And so I was surprised by how soft-spoken he was for such a confident guy. But you could also just hear through the soft-spokenness how confident he was. I'll just share a quick story if you have time. His first sport was wrestling, believe it or not, when he was young. Because here in the Midwest, and probably in Pennsylvania too, which is, I know, good wrestling country, that's really oftentimes the first sport is offered as a youth. Like in first, second, third grade, they got these mini wrestling tournaments. So his family put him in that. He ended up being a very good basketball player. Quit wrestling, but he said that wrestling was kind of what set him into being so competitive and wanting to win. And I said, "So when did you quit wrestling?" He said, "3rd grade." I said, "What if you'd have stayed with it?" And he goes, "Well, I don't want a state title and probably be wrestling in college somewhere, I think." And it wasn't like he was joking. He was just matter-of-factly like, "Yeah, that's what would happen." And I just got a kick out of it, just his quiet calmness and quiet confidence. And, man, when he puts a football helmet on, he is a special player, particularly for a true freshman.
When they've got him also back on punts and kickoffs, what kind of impact has he had, and what do his instincts mean in terms of his feel for the game and when he's returning kicks?
Yeah, very, very big impact. The kick returns have not been as successful. They haven't quite sprung one. He, at Illinois, had one where just a shoelace, he might have popped it, but he's had a 60-yard return in punt. It wasn't a touchdown, but he had a 60-yard punt return, and it's a disappointment if he doesn't get 10 or 12 yards on a punt return. And as you know, that's not an easy thing to do. And at Minnesota, there hasn't been a real dynamic punt returner for a while. This is high praise because this kid was a first-round pick, and your listeners are well aware of him. But Cooper DeJean, the Iowa product, right. He reminds me so much of DeJean. One, they have the same number. They all, they both wore number 3 at college. Mm-hmm. They're both from these small towns, rural Iowa for DeJean and rural Minnesota for Coy Parrish. And they just have this ease of movement where you're like, they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Like, how did that guy miss that tackle? That the vaunted fair catch, not fair catch, invalid deal that, the Gophers won that game on a couple years ago. There's a still shot that's floating around where there's like 7 Gophers and the sideline. They basically had him encapsulated, and DeJean just somehow scored a touchdown on it. Now they got, it was called back, and it was the right call. It was the right call. We in Minnesota believe that was the right call. But, this kid, Coy Parrish, has some similarities in just how they're light-footed. They're just fleet of foot, great lateral movement, and they just got an electricity. I mean, it's the first time in a while at Minnesota Stadium that when you force a punt, there's a buzz. Like, people are kind of holding their breath. And I think that's the way it was at Kinnick Stadium often when DeJean was back there waiting for a punt.
Finally, a lot of people, the weather, it's going to be 37 degrees. It's not going to be any wind, for goodness sakes. Right? And everyone acts like it's 37 degrees all the time in Minnesota. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Penn State's not used to playing in it. Neither's Minnesota. It's like, I mean, that's the part that makes me laugh all the time. Okay, it's been nice in both places for months.
Yeah, well, and I'll be quite honest too. 34 in late November here for a football game, like, we've been -3 before, Steve. So this isn't terrible. I mean, this is fine. The Gopher players will be absolutely used to it. I would think Penn State guys, 34 is not like 0 or 10 below, or a wind chill. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, the Iowa game was like a minus 35 wind chill here on the second to last week of the year, and the stadium was about half full. Even the Iowa folks who drove up said, "Forget that, I'm watching from the hotel." It was really bitter. It was a terrible cold day. But I don't think weather, and I don't know what the wind forecast is, but I think 30 is fine. Like I don't think that's going to decide who wins or loses this game. And what I'm really looking forward to is when and if you guys make the playoffs, hosting a game with somebody from the South on a 30-degree day in Happy Valley. That's what I want to see. I want to see Texas or somebody. It won't be Texas probably, but whoever you guys host, I want to see a Southern team try to come up and play in the cold.
You are the best, my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Saturday, and I'll mark down February 3rd.
Yeah. Outstanding, Steve. Always great to chat with you, man.
You're the best, Mike. Thanks so much. You
got it. Take care, Steve.
He is one of the best in the business. Mike Grimm, the play-by-play voice of Minnesota, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.